thank you for the invitation, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be on this panel. It's a big shame that I could not travel to the beautiful Lebanese resort. I hope I can do it next year, maybe. So thanks also to Paolo for his remarks, and maybe let me start with a couple of words about the current situation. Now, it's clear that there are currently huge uncertainties around the evolution of the pandemic and the potential scars that it will leave on the global economy. So it is extremely difficult to make short-term forecasts, even not to mention the long-term ones that are needed to carry out the proper debt sustainability analysis. Now, this being said, there is no doubt that the Greek economy is currently taking a relatively big hit. And this will obviously also result in the increase of the public debt to GDP ratio, which was already very high before the crisis, so it will increase even further. But I think it is important to keep in mind that, first of all, as Paolo just said, Greece has successfully tapped the markets in the past months since the beginning of the pandemic crisis. And it was not only for short-term issuances, but also for long-term bonds. And there are some critical elements to this, which is, first of all, Greece's debt refinancing needs are fairly limited in the coming years. They remain around 4 to 5% of GDP over the next decade, which is a very good basis to keep the overall gross financing needs also manageable. Greece has considerable cash reserves, which also provide a cushion to absorb liquidity shocks. And obviously the fall in the spreads and yields, which is obviously primarily driven by the ECB's pandemic emergency purchase program, is also very helpful in this regard. And finally, it's very important to point out that the increase in the debt to GDP ratio for the time being is mostly driven by the expected fall in GDP, as opposed to the increase really in the stock of debt. So should there be a fast recovery, as we hope there will be, but obviously it will depend also on the pandemic's evolution, it would also lead to a relatively fast drop in the debt to GDP ratio. Now, this brings me to the main message that I would like to pass, and this is that beyond hoping for a fast way out of the pandemic, what will be critical for the sustainability of public debt in the medium and long run is obviously, as has been mentioned by Paolo, as has been discussed in previous sessions, it will be to ensure sustainable growth. And as it has also been mentioned by Minister Staikouras in his speech earlier, the EU has been mobilizing a substantial amount of support to help countries facing the crisis, of which Greece will be among the largest beneficiaries, actually. Greece can receive around 10% of GDP in grants under various next generation EU programs, to which Greece can also benefit of favorable condition loans amounting to a further 6.7% of GDP. And these funds will be available very fast, starting from next year, and come on top of the EU cohesion and social funds, which are additionally 1.5 to 2% of GDP. Not to mention, actually, the S&P ANFA income equivalents, which can be transferred to Greece under the ongoing enhanced surveillance, which amount to an additional 0.8% of GDP annually. So altogether, Greece can benefit in the coming years of about 5% of GDP in transfers only annually. Now, it will be essential to grab the opportunity and to spend these funds in a meaningful way to support growth while continuing the modernization of the Greek economy. This will require, in the first place, reforms to enhance the absorption and planning capacity of public administration. And in this respect, the government's initiatives to set up a strategic project pipeline and project preparation facility are most welcome. Strong controls over the spending of funds will also be needed, and the government is currently preparing a public procurement bill to address the weaknesses of the framework. This is also very welcome. Another element that will be critical is the strong reform agenda. It has also been discussed in previous sessions. The main elements of the reform agenda are, of course, well known and have been pursued under past financial assistance programs, are still being pursued under enhanced surveillance, and it will be important to build on those, and Minister Staikouras has also outlined them earlier today. I'm talking or having in mind fiscal structural reforms, including that of the tax administration, which needs to continue, labor market, education and skills reforms. Obviously, as Paolo just mentioned and Francesco in the previous section, the financial sector stability needs to be ensured, in which the adoption of the insolvency code will be a key step. Business environment needs to be, the reforms need to continue, including licensing procedures, cadastral, land use, and obviously modernizing the court system and increasing judicial efficiency will also be important. Now, it's very good that the government is going to finalize its national reform plan pretty soon, and it's a solid basis to build on, as also Declan said in the previous session. Of course, the devil lies in the details, and will need to be worked out in the coming weeks and months, and the Commission will be engaging with the authorities at technical levels. Now, much of this is not new, as I said, and the RRF gives funding to pursue this agenda. Of course, the RRF is going to give priority to sustainable growth, but also with a focus on the twin transition towards green and digital economies. And the last element that will be key, of course, is the continued implementation, which has been the Achilles heel of successive Greek reform initiatives and programs. But I do hope that the government's strong ownership of the reforms will be a good basis in this respect. Let me stop here. Thanks.